Rugby Championship, folks, round number one, team of the week. We're going to go through 15 guys who played pretty well at the weekend. Surprise, surprise, it's going to be largely All Blacks and Springboks because both of those sides won their games pretty handily. But we'll go through a few honourable mentions as well, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on who you'd be picking. If you were picking a team of the week, we start with the most important guys on the field, of course, and that is your front rowers. Props. And I have started with a man who was supposed to be here in New Zealand playing golf right now. But with the injury to Oxenchair, Stephen Kitsoff had to stay behind and start in the number one jersey for the Boks. He did alright, didn't he? Just quietly. Springboks set piece gets on top pretty well. He's always a big part of that. He finishes the game with 6 carries, 7 metres, and beats a couple of defenders, which is very prop-like from Stephen Kitsoff. 3 passes. Makes the majority of his tackles. 5 from 6. Wins a turnover along the way. And doesn't concede any penalties. And the guy he was up against, Alan Alatoa, concedes a couple. There's no kind of direct metric there. But generally speaking, if your props are conceding no penalties and the opposition are, you're doing something right. So Stephen Kitsoff, absolutely the expected performance, the guy's class. And he puts in a classy shift. So no real surprises, but very pleasing to see him out there. And I've put an All Blacks guy alongside him, because if you watch that All Blacks game, they were just winning penalties for fun. Now, he only has the 1 carry and didn't get very far going anywhere because he's credited with 0 metres, so not much in terms of the ball carrying game, but defensively, he has the most tackles of any of the New Zealand starting front row when he makes 8 from 10, and likewise, he doesn't concede any penalties. Now, he doesn't concede any penalties, doesn't sound that flash. But again, if you watch the game, how many penalties did the All Blacks win at scrum time? Multiple. I mean, Gajo, I think his kind of opposite had at least a couple. Saldoni conceded at least 1 or 2. Montoya was conceding some, although albeit probably not at scrum time. But yeah, the All Blacks front row was on top. And it was good to see the All Blacks front row get on top because I think I talked a little bit before about the All Blacks getting kind of at least parity, but this was more than parity. This was dominance. So, yeah, pleasing for Tyrell Lomax to put in a shift like that. And one more Kiwi, actually, in the front row. I've gone with old Dane Coles. He's not New Zealand's favourite hooker at the moment in terms of, the starting guy. I think if you were to base it on public opinion, it'd be Taukei'aho, for sure. But Dane Coles kind of rolled back the clock with that performance, and he's still got some gas in the tank. When he had a kind of run, I feel like it was a dead play anyway, but when he was running alongside Sinti, the midfielder come winger for the Pumas, Dane Coles wasn't falling far behind, so he's still got some gas. He has 4 carries for 17 metres, which is a pretty good return, including a clean break. He obviously scores a try. He's got a couple of passes. Makes 4 from 4 tackles, and his line out is at 90%. So, yeah, maybe not quite as much niggle this week as we were expecting because, he's good at being the old grub who gets under people's skin. But, no, man, he just put in a really solid performance. So, very, very pleasing to see. The All Blacks theme continues. I'm going to put in an All Blacks lock in old Scotty Barrett. Now, we had no Retallick, no Whitelock, which is an unusual All Blacks, locking duo. We've usually got one or the other over the last goodness knows how many years. But Scott Barrett, man, he was the senior man in the second row for the All Blacks this week, and bloody hell, he looked good. 8 runs, 11 metres, beats a defender. He almost scores a try. Xavier is able to score the next phase because Scotty Barrett's smart enough to realise he's not going to make it to the line. Quick recycle ball, Xavier is able to go over. He has 6 passes, including that offload for Coles, which is a try assist for Scotty Barrett, so some good hands. Makes 9 from 9 tackles, which is the second most of any lock this week. He wins 3 lineouts, including a lineout steal. He was just bloody everywhere. The one thing he does have, as if you're kind of looking for something negative to talk about, he conceded 3 penalties. And if you consider the fact that the All Blacks only conceded 9, for one man to have 3 is probably a little bit too high. But as I said, he was involved in a bit of everything. So with that comes the risk of maybe conceding penalties. I think 1 for at least not rolling away, maybe 1 for offside. But yeah, Scotty Barrett was into a bit of everything. Very pleasing to see. And a debutant, at least in Springboks colours, Jean Klein. Like, not perfect by any means. Like, the Springboks line-out numbers, I think, were pretty good. It wasn't always that clean. But Klein had a pretty good shift, man, for a guy who's making his test debut for his home country. A little bit of extra pressure in the kind of pressure cooker environment that is Loftus. He's been talked about a lot during the week in the lead up to the game, so he's human. He has to feel some of that pressure, even if he's, just on his task. 6 carries for 10 metres. Pretty good return for a lock in terms of his metres per carry. He has 5 passes and an offload, so not afraid to chuck the ball around a bit. Again, that's a kind of confidence thing when you see that from a lock. 3 from 3 tackles is not a huge amount, but remember, the Springboks had so much ball in that game. All of their tackling numbers just tend to be lower than the Wallabies ones. He wins 4 lineouts, so pretty imperious in the air. He does have that 1 lineout steal, which sadly for him leads to a Wallabies try, but that's not his fault. His job is just to compete in the air. It's not his fault. Alatoa was the first guy to pounce on it. He does have 1 penalty conceded, but I just thought he was pretty solid, man. Like, good stuff from a guy, as I said, who's under a bit of extra pressure. Handled it really well. So, yeah, there you go. Clean for the second row alongside Scotty Barrett. Loose forwards. I got another Springboks guy in old Peter Steff. And when I look at his numbers, a little bit uncharacteristic for old Peter Steff. Like, he tends to be a defensive powerhouse more than... Like, he's got a huge work rate no matter what he's doing. But when I think Peter Steff, I think more tackles than defenders beaten and clean breaks and stuff. But geez, he was fired up ball in hand, which was pleasing, man, because he could do a job. 14 carries is a lot. And as I said, the Springboks guys did have a lot of opportunity to carry with the amount of ball they had. He beats 3 defenders, and he has a clean break. So it's the most run meters of any of the blindside flankers this week with 40. 4 passes and an offload. He was just looking for work. Like, he scores a try. He's the one who kind of has there's nobody there. Pick and go, right? When Thomas Dutoy had gone close, he seemed to want to try that old Peter Steff. He has a big carry before Aronsa's hat-trick try. Gets well over the advantage line. And that's what you want. Like, 4 out of 8 tackles, when I look at that, that's not that flash. But Peter Steff's role, and I haven't gone back to watch the whole game again, but he often shoots up to make put guys under pressure and not necessarily have to make the tackle. Even if you get an arm on them, you force them to chuck a ball early or whatever. Sometimes that'll affect his numbers, but he put in like the tackle on Alan Alatoa when he pounced on that line-out steal. So Dutoy was the man trying to kind of shut it down before it got anywhere, but the Wallabies were still able to shift it wide. But yeah, he's the guy who make that first tackle. He's part of the big maul that gets a penalty try. So yeah, man, he was just everywhere. Wins a couple of lineouts, and he did drop a little bit of ball. 4 turnovers conceded. So along with the missed tackles, it's not a perfect effort from the former World Player of the Year, but no penalties conceded. Yeah, I just thought he was a very, very busy chap in that Springboks loose forwards. And another Springbok loose forward, I'm going to put in old Marco van Staden. Like, pressure. Talk about pressure for like Jean Klein. Van Staden just had to fill in the shoes of injured captain Siya Kolisi. Like, pretty big shoes to fill. And he's not played for the Springboks for a wee while, but he just played like he's like a 100-cap test veteran. No problems for him. And again, especially his ball and hand stuff. Like, when you think Van Staden, you're thinking he's going to be a menace at the breakdown. And when I checked his stats, weirdly, it didn't say he'd got any turnovers, but I seem to remember him forcing at least 1 penalty at the breakdown. He's always a real menace there. But interestingly, his attacking numbers were great as well. And again, maybe it just speaks to the way the Springboks dominated with ball in hand. But 8 runs for 43 metres, which is the most for any of the open side flankers this week. That I wouldn't have picked Marco van Staden for that. But man, he was just dynamic. Beats 5 defenders, which I think is first equal of guys who broke tackles this week. Again, that's not the first thing I think of when I think Van Staden. 3 passes. He's the guy who peels off that maul, pops it to Bongi, who pops it to Aronsa for that try. So he helps set up that play. He makes 5 from 5 tackles. He's also part of that maul that gets the penalty try. It's essentially him and Tutoy like driving through with like Bongi in the boot. So yeah, man, just another guy who's ever doesn't concede any penalties for an open side flanker. Not bad, not bad. So yeah, I thought he did really well. The number 8 I'm going to pick is maybe a bit of a left field one, and you might have to bear with me for a second. But I've gone with one of the Pumas guys, an old Rodrigo Bruni. And like the Pumas weren't that good. They got pretty well hammered. There weren't that many standout performances, but I thought Bruni looked pretty good the whole game. And when I looked at his numbers, I feel like my gut feeling was kind of backed up. Like, he has 8 carries for 60 metres. Now, the next best number 8 this week had 32. So to have 60 metres is massive. He beats 3 defenders. He has a clean break. So certainly, among the Pumas ball carriers, this guy is your star for the week. And he's the top tackler of the week with 14 out of 15. Plus, he wins 2 turnovers. And he does that despite getting a yellow card. Admittedly, it's kind of a team yellow card. He comes in the side of a maul, so it's not necessarily... Normally, it would just be a penalty, but given the situation, it becomes a yellow. So that's obviously not ideal. You've got to have more wits about you to not concede a penalty when you're on yellow card warning, but he does give away that penalty, so he gets a yellow card, which is a negative. But overall, man, defensively strong, offensively strong. Like, the first try, the Argentinians score, they've had the tap and go, they're like a metre away. Who, like, cleans out the All Blacks defenders to make space for Sordoni? It's Bruni. Like, he's just getting in there, making sure they got secure ball and just opening up that little bit of space. So, as I said, like, there's other guys who had good games, but yeah, I do think Bruni just stood out, man. Thought he had a pretty good game. So, pleasing to see, because I don't think he was that good the last time we saw him in Pumas colours. Like, a couple of years ago, he was doing really well, and hopefully he's recaptured some of that form. So, that's your forwards. Mostly Springboks and All Blacks with one Puma in there. Halfback, I've gone with New Zealand's Aaron Smith. Continues to be class. I think, with Damian McKenzie being the guy he's paired with in that 9-10 combo, there's a little bit of risk of them being a bit disjointed, but I think for the most part, maybe a little bit rattled early, but for the most part, those guys ran the show pretty well. And Aaron's passing game is still just world class. That's not changed about him for years now. He is just very, very consistent. He only has 1 carry. He only goes 3 metres, but it is a clean break. He beats a defender and he gets a try. In terms of efficiency per carry, that's pretty bloody good. 62 passes, not really called upon to kick. Only concedes the 1 turnover. Makes 6 or 7 tackles, but just flat, crisp passing. Gets the All Blacks going forward. Yeah, man, Aaron Smith, that's just, without being like his best game ever, just quintessential Aaron Smith. Smooth passing, takes the one opportunity he's given to run it and scores a try with it. Happy days. I thought he performed really well in that regard. And then I am going to put old D-Mac next to him. Now, D-Mac, I think it was only, they said, his 3rd start at 10 for the All Blacks. Didn't goal kick that well. The goal kicking is certainly an issue. If you're going to be the test goal kicker, you need to kick better than he kicked. He missed a lot of conversions. Some of them pretty tricky kicks, but you got to get them. That's just a thing. And I said, a little bit rattled early. That was just the All Blacks generally, not just him, but like he gets a kick charged down early. But overall, I thought he pushed the team around the park pretty well. 8 carries, 31 metres. Beats 3 defenders, has a clean break, that like kind of wraparound play where he got that clean break to set up, was it Bodie's try? That was pretty bloody sweet. 24 passes and 3 try assists. That's what you want from your 10s. Your 9s and your 10s. You want them setting up other players for a bit of glory, and that's D-Mac's job. He pushes the team around the park really well. He puts in 7 kicks. He makes 5 from 5 tackles. He does cough up the ball a couple of times, and like I said, the goal kicking wasn't great. But, yeah, a confident one. Will they play him against the Springboks at number 10, or will they go with Mo'unga? My money would probably be on Mo'unga because, he's the tried and true. And with the nature of that game, with both teams getting big first-round results, I think they maybe go for the more, as I said, kind of tried and true. But, yeah, D-Mac's put his hand up, and he'll be certainly better for having that game played at 10. Midfield, it's back to the Springboks connection with old Andre Esterhuizen. Now, Andre's a big unit, and I feel like at international level, he's never really imposed himself on the game as we've seen him do previously. Like at Harlequins, he's amazing. Playing with Marcus Smith and maybe playing with Mani Lubbock suits him, but also just playing with a lot of ball suits this guy. If you give this guy 17 carries, which is the most anybody had this week, eventually you're going to get some fireworks. And sure enough, 17 carries, 56 metres, beats 5 defenders, so that's first equal alongside Van Staden. He has a clean break. He sets up one of Aarons' tries with a wide ball, 7 passes from him. And he just showed that kind of desperation. Like when Corin Betty got that initial try in the first few minutes for the Wallabies, Esterhuizen was still trying to ankle tap him. Like when the game was over, he's still running hard. He doesn't just put his hands on his hips and give up. So it's pleasing to see that kind of thing. 4 from 6 tackles. I'm assuming the ankle tap attempt is maybe one of the missed ones. But yeah, you want this guy running at the opposition, busting tackles. And yeah, I thought he did that really well. So really pleasing. You've still got Damon Delende, who's already come over to New Zealand, but in either guy, you've got guys who can certainly crash the ball up pretty bloody well. Outside centre, I've gone with an All Blacks guy, an old Rico Ioane. He still feels like a bit of a winger, doesn't he? Like he only passes the ball 3 times. Like certainly the South African wingers, I think, had a bit more ball than the All Blacks wingers did, but Rico's he's still a weapon. And he's getting better at the midfield. And again, not perfect. 7 runs though, 52 metres, couple of clean breaks, 4 defenders beaten. He's dangerous. Scores a try, takes that try really, really well. So attacking wise, he's phenomenal. He's going to do things other midfielders just can't do. The jet shoes are his. He hasn't lost his pace yet. He's going to cause people problems. The 3 passes is still a bit of a question mark. Obviously, you'd like your midfielders. Doesn't really have a kicking game. You'd like him to maybe pass it a wee bit more. But if he's scoring a try on his own, you can forgive him occasionally. 5 from 10 tackles is low for him for defensive plays as well. That's genuinely a worry. Like, I think, yeah, in Super Rugby, his numbers for that area were actually pretty fine. But, yeah, maybe he got found out a little bit. Does have a penalty conceded. Does have a turnover conceded. So it's a little bit of one of those ones where you balance a few shortcomings with some amazing attacking play. So, yeah, not perfect by any means. But Rico, as I said, on attack, there's not that many guys like him in terms of what he brings. He's not like a pure playmaker by any means, but a bit of a ball hog, as Tony said it the other day on the podcast. But, yeah, Rico. Danger man. Outside backs, you know who's coming here. And that's old Kurtley Aronson. Goodness gracious me. What a try-scoring machine this guy is. Gets a hat-trick. There was talk about this guy getting flattened by the Aussie winger. His name escapes me. Fijian guy. Vunivalu. There you go. There was talk about him getting flattened by Vunivalu, not being kind of physically imposing enough to take him on. Man, he made him look silly. Didn't he? 3 tries. 9 carries, 81 metres. Very rarely does a guy have more clean breaks than defenders beaten, but Aronson manages at 4 clean breaks, 3 defenders beaten. The guy's electric. If you guys put him and Colby on the same team, that's almost unfair. Because their footwork and whatnot, their speed is just incredible. And power as well. 3 passes and offload. 2 from 4 tackles for a winger is maybe about normal. But yeah, a couple of turnovers conceded. But ultimately, geez, he could have had that 4th try. If not for that penalty try that Vunivalu conceded with that sticking his hand out. But man, Aronson. You must like him if you're a Springbok fan. He's a likeable chap. What can I say? Geez, he's electric. Love watching him play. The other guy who I've put in is the All Blacks debutant, Emoni Narua. Now, he is defensively very sound. It's pleasing to see his defensive numbers from Super Rugby translate into test level, albeit just 1 test. But like among the All Blacks wingers or outside backs, like his tackling rate in Super Rugby was like 90%, which for a winger is really high. Most of the guys are like 70s, maybe 80s, but he was in the 90s. And this week he makes 11 from 11 tackles, which is the most easily by any of the wingers. So great to see that from him. He also bags a try on debut and is just busy with his carries. 7 carries, which is only 2 fewer than Aronsa. So it didn't feel like the All Blacks were getting it wide as much, but he still manages 7 carries. So 79 metres, beats a couple of defenders and a clean break, so maybe not as kind of offensively devastating as what we saw from Aronsa. But as I said, defensive game was very solid. Couple of passes, wins a turnover, does concede 1 penalty, but yeah, man, solid debut from him. And I will be curious to see whether they back him against the Boks as well, or whether they kind of go slightly more conservative with their picks, because the All Blacks with D-Mac at 10, debutant on the right wing, bringing Coles back for his first game at hooker for bloody ages, did feel like they were a little bit more experimental than they have been. So yeah, we will see. And the last guy, your fullback, I have put in old Willie le Roux. Very similar to D-Mac in terms of that playmaking role, to be able to shift the ball from one point to another, to open up that space. I think Willie le Roux did that with aplomb. He looked really, really good, helping out old Manie Libbok as that next playmaker. Like 15 carries, 16 metres, like he's not that flash in terms of like fullbacks running the ball back. But, you know, he kicks it like 10 times. Most of the kicking game was pretty solid, but then 16 passes. 16 passes for a fullback is a lot, because he just inserts himself into that back line, pushes the ball wide. He does shoot up out of the line for the Coram Betty try, but the Aussies had an overlap, so he had to shut down the space. The Aussies were able to go around him, but I wouldn't really blame him for that one, so he's credited with 1 from 2 tackles. But yeah, man, the way he sets up other people to kind of get those glory moments, that's what he's doing. So, as I said, he may not be the man, you know, getting the man of the match trophy at the end of the game for scoring the hat trick, but 1 or 2 passes before that try gets scored, it's often le Roux that's setting the guys up for the line breaks, or setting guys up to shift that ball wide and open up that space. So, yeah, I thought overall he did pretty bloody well. So, there you go. That's your 15 guys. I promised some honourable mentions. Both Frans Malherbe and Ethan de Groot were fantastic at scrum time for their respective sides, so definitely worthy of a shout. Shannon Frizzell on the blind side for the All Blacks had one of his better games, which was really pleasing to see. Likewise, Sam Cane. I haven't picked him in the side either. Sam Cane was genuinely, maybe not as offensively effective as the likes of a Van Staden, but man, he was making some crunching tackles, so even kicked that pitch invader at the end, which he's copping a bit of flack for. But yeah, Sam Cane defensively, one of his best shifts ever. Artie Savi at number 8 as well. You know, scored a try, got a turnover, just generally doing Artie Savia stuff. Dwayne Vermeulen led his side really well from number 8 for the Boks. Geordie Barrett got man of the match from the game, and yet I've snubbed him for Esterhuizen. You could pick either one. I mean, he scores a try of his own, part of that wraparound play for his brother's try, so also really good. Manie Libbok, again, kind of missed a couple of kicks, but in a high-pressure game, step in for Andre Pollard, I thought also did really well. Bodie Barrett at fullback, maybe answered a few doubters. He also played a pretty bloody good game. Kane Moody on the right wing. Mateo Carreras for the Pumas, I thought was one of the few Pumas players who actually kind of stood out a bit. Marika Corambetti for the Wallabies, chased a bit of everything, scored a try. Carter Gordon comes on and looks all right, but yeah, there you go, folks. That is the team of the week for round number 1. Look forward to seeing how the teams line up for a very interesting looking round number 2, with the 2 winners taking on each other here in NZ, and then the 2 losers get the chance to right some wrongs in Australia. You guys let us know your thoughts. Check out the podcast that me and Tony are doing, 2 Cents Gets Distracted. I'll put a link to the podcast playlist probably up there somewhere or down in the description. Tony and I recorded that yesterday. It should be online sometime soon, where we talk about the games at the weekend and other rugby stuff. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.